I did a short about a week ago talking about what I think the best argument for the existence of God is, and that was God in the general sense, not necessarily Christianity. So now I wanted to talk about the best argument for Christianity in specific is. And the best argument in favor of Christianity is going to be the death and resurrection of Jesus. Christianity as a whole hinges on this historical moment actually being true, that Christ died on the cross and 3 days later was resurrected. The death of Jesus is pretty well historically attested. I mean, it's talked about in all four Gospels. Um, and even secular scholars talk about how, if we can be sure of anything, is that Jesus existed and that he did, in fact, die on the cross. It was typical Roman punishment around that time that prisoners would die by crucifixion. Jesus was not a Roman citizen, so he could be crucified. Crucifixion, we can be pretty certain happened. Obviously, the resurrection is going to be much more difficult to prove. Paul does talk about it a bit in 1 Corinthians 15, how Jesus appeared to Peter and John, which Paul doesn't specifically say in 1 Corinthians, but that does happen in John's gospel. And then to the 12, and then to 500 others. Now, that is only talked about in 1 Corinthians, but that's a lot of people. And Paul was very close to people like Peter, like James, and like John, who did see Christ risen from the dead. And they easily could have refuted him on this point, but it's there. Most of historical artifacts like the Shroud of Turin, I know there's a bit of controversy about that, but from what I can tell, it does there's more than just a little bit of evidence to prove that very well might date all the way back to Jesus. But Paul also talks about in 1 Corinthians 15 that without the resurrection, there's no point. We're still dead in our sins. Christianity does not matter. We cannot be free from sin. So ultimately, if Paul says that the whole reason he is a Christian is because of the resurrection of Jesus, and that without that resurrection, Christianity is meaningless, I think that gives some credence that the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus is the most important aspect of Christianity, and therefore, if that is true, the greatest argument for Christianity. Curious what you guys think.